And also on our broadcast, we've got Corinne Clark, who's a Republican strategist. She's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Ms. Clark, thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking to us here on WION. You're a Republican strategist. Now, a lot of pollsters are saying that this is a neck-and-neck race that is headed for a photo finish. Now, as a Republican strategist, what is your reading in terms of the number of people who voted so far? Do you think the Republicans have an edge, or is it still an election that is too close to call?
It definitely looks like Republicans have an edge right now. The early voting numbers, as your correspondent was just talking about, the early voting numbers look really great. Early voting hasn't been a strategy for Republicans before. We are usually election day voters, but this has been a historic turnout for Republicans in early voting. And then we suspect that there will be a lot of election day voters as well. What we've seen with the Democrats, who historically vote early, they are not turning out yet. And, maybe they'll show up on election day, but that seems less likely since that's not a historical precedent for them. And that indicates there might be some lack of enthusiasm for Democrats. They are not turning out in the numbers they normally do. And that might be because they're not too thrilled to vote for Kamala.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the Democrats are people who go out and vote early, even before the election day, but the Republicans vote on the election day. But, what is being reported is that the Democrats have said that they've at least knocked on 100,000 doors of homes to try and get people out to go out and vote. That number is nowhere near to what the Republicans are trying to do, where the number of volunteers who are out on the streets, who are at this moment looking for voters to go out to the polling station and vote, the Democrats outnumber them 1 to 2 or perhaps 1 to 3. What is your reading of that?
Well, that adjustment of strategy has a lot to do with the fact that their voter turnout was not what they needed or expected in early voting. So I think they are adjusting. They're out there knocking doors because they need all of those votes now. And we have a different strategy because our voters are reliable on election day. We already had the high turnout. We've got Trump and J.D. Vance with full schedules rallying the vote. They each have 4 rallies a day yesterday, 4 rallies today. So I think that there are some different strategies, but that response from Democrats going door to door, that is not their normal strategy. That is a complete adjustment because their voter turnout was so low in early voting that they're having to make some adjustments and circle back and hope that they can turn out some voters now.
Interesting. Now, also weigh in on what you make and what you expect will happen in the battleground states. Do you think the Republicans can win Pennsylvania? This is the state that a contender needs to win to become the president. That is what has happened in the last 5 elections.
Yeah, we're certainly paying close attention to Pennsylvania, and I think it will be an important state. I think Trump has a lot of momentum there. And you can tell that by the way the Democrat Senate candidate has actually been running ads showing him, hugging Donald Trump. I think that there's a lot of popularity in Pennsylvania for the Trump campaign. I think J.D. Vance brought a lot to that ticket, it being from Ohio. He's kind of embraces that Rust Belt mentality that really plays well in Pennsylvania as well. So I really hope that Trump pulls it off. It will be definitely ease my mind if we can take Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So I hope that he has it. I think he has a lot of momentum there, and it will be close.
All right, now there are reports that are coming in that Kamala Harris has narrowly defeated former President Donald Trump in the U.S. territory of Guam. Now, this poll does not count towards the Electoral College, but the fact that she's managed to win Guam, how do the Republicans look at this?
Yes. That I think is the most just interesting conversation, is that normally Democrats take a much higher percentage of the vote in Guam. So that Kamala did not receive as many votes as normally a Democratic candidate would receive shows that there might be a lack of enthusiasm. And as you can see, we're kind of establishing a pattern here. So that's an interesting note for conversation, that of these little bellwethers that we normally count on, like this goes Democrat, this goes Republican, Kamala's not really turning out the same level of enthusiasm for Democrats. And that's maybe something that we will see throughout the polls for the rest of the night, but we will just have to wait and see.
Now, American politics is about big money. And when it comes to donors who in fact backed the two candidates, Kamala Harris, even though she became the candidate only on the 25th of July, ended up raising more than $1 billion. On the other hand, Donald Trump trailed. He raised more than $300 odd million. That's almost 1/3 of what Kamala Harris managed to in fact raise. Do you think, that's a big difference in terms of the money that's in fact been raised and that's now been pumped into election campaigning? How much of that political money that's been pumped into campaigning will tell today?
Well, I think that the 2016 campaign actually showed us a lot about how much money really plays into how people vote. And it's not as much as people think. Hillary Clinton had similar numbers to the Trump campaign. She outraised him by far, but she wasn't able to beat him at the ballot box. I think a lot of that money, when you see the numbers like that, it's not taking into account where the money comes from. I think Trump has a really good grassroots donor campaign, which usually turns out to a get out the vote campaign. The people who are small dollar donors are more likely to feel like, their $10, their $25 is a lot of skin in the game, versus Democrats who have these huge fundraisers where people pay $30,000 a plate. They get a huge war chest built up, but they're all from millionaires who don't really feel invested in the candidate. They were going to give that money to whoever. So I think it does play a part. That money is crucial in mobilizing GOTV, getting ads on air, and just keeping people rallied. But President Trump has no lack of momentum. So I don't think the number of dollars in the war chest is going to make as much of a difference as it used to. And that all changed with Donald Trump because he knows how to motivate the grassroots.
Right. Now, for people who are watching these elections from outside the United States of America, something that stood out very starkly is the number of celebrities who went on to endorse the Democrat candidate Kamala Harris, from Taylor Swift to Jennifer Lopez to Bruce Springsteen. You could name anyone. They were all backing Kamala Harris. But contrast that to Donald Trump. He had some billionaires backing him. He had Elon Musk. He had Joe Rogan, who is one of the most popular podcasters in the United States of America. Why do you think more celebrities are backing Kamala Harris, but entrepreneurs seem to be backing Donald Trump?
I think this is a normal split. We have always known Hollywood to support Democrat candidates. I think Trump has more momentum in our culture than most Republican candidates in history. But of course, Hollywood is disgusting. They're all pedophiles, elitists. They don't pay for their own gas and groceries. They don't know how much things cost. They're not building anything. They're not suffering in Kamala's economy the way that the average American is. I think that is not surprising that they endorsed a candidate. They're like Kamala. She's completely out of touch with the average person, and so are they. But I think it's a great sign that Donald Trump has the support of entrepreneurs. That is the kind of growth that America needs. If we can build up the people who have great ideas, who are building great things for our country, we can make America great again. And I'm glad that they have taken the risk to support the president so publicly. That is amazing to see. And I do think that people care more about those entrepreneurs than they do care about who Jennifer Lopez is voting for.
All right, you say that the Republican slogan, of course, is Make America Great Again. The Democrats turn around and say, what do you mean Make America Great Again? Isn't America already great? Why do you think America has lost its way?
I think America is a great country, but we have definitely fallen far from where we should be. And I think anyone who's lived in the last 4 years of the Biden administration knows that. Our economy is struggling. Our wages are not going up. Inflation is so high, so that money that we are making is buying less. And that really has a huge dramatic impact on the average family, on how much food you can buy, on what you can give to your kids. And I think that is such a sad thing that so many families have been thinking. I cannot give my kids everything that I had when I was growing up. So we know that Trump had a great economy. A lot of us want to get back to that, and we want to make America even better. We shouldn't be settling for what we've been getting the last 4 years.
We'll talk about economy in just a bit, but I want to talk about Donald Trump during his first tenure as president between 2016 till 2020. One of the very first things that Donald Trump did is he brought about what was at that time described as a Muslim ban. And there was a lot of rhetoric that saw him as a sort of an Islamophobic leader. But contrast that to what he's now tweeting. I want to read out a tweet that he did. We're building the biggest and the broadest coalition in American political history. This includes record-breaking numbers of Arab and Muslim voters in Michigan who want peace. They know Kamala and her warmonger cabinet will invade the Middle East, get millions of Muslims killed, and start World War III. This is what Donald Trump has now tweeted. What do you think has changed? Why is it that Donald Trump and also Kamala Harris are now looking to try and get the Arab and the Muslim voters behind them?
President Trump has always built the biggest tent the Republican Party has ever had. I think the so-called Muslim ban, that was mostly drama. I think there was a travel ban implemented, very specific countries that we had.
If I can just interrupt you there.
There were no attacks on Muslim Americans ever under Donald Trump's presidency. He was never an anti-Muslim president.
You know, when you say that this was a ban that was mostly in the nature, Ms. Clark, when you say that this was a ban, the Muslim ban as it was called at that time.
It was not called the Muslim ban by anyone but the media.
It was reported in the
media referred
American
to it as
media.
that.
Yes, that is how it was reported in the American media. You say that this was drama. Do you think if Donald Trump were to be elected this time round, we would not have these kind of very polarizing, laws and policies that would be brought about?
I think that what the important part is, the part of that tweet that you mentioned, is that Donald Trump does not support any new wars. I think there cannot be anything that is more pro anybody in the entire world. That's the biggest tent there is. Donald Trump will not support the American military going into a nation and wiping out an entire population for something that doesn't benefit the national security of America. I think there is a lot of polarizing sentiment in the media, and part of that is because they represent the interests that love war, and they make money off of war. And Donald Trump does not support any new wars, and I think that is why his coalition is supported by Muslim Americans, by Israeli Americans, by the largest voting bloc in Republican history for sure, of all across the board. But I think that's what you have to get down to is, can you say, oh, this president is anti-Muslim when he is the only one who does not support bombing Muslim countries for no reason? That is monumental. And I think that is a lot of the reason that Donald Trump has so much support. That's why you saw former Congressman Ron Paul endorse him earlier this week.
Interesting. Now, in the last 1 year, ever since the war broke out in the Middle East, we've witnessed huge protests within American cities where people were telling the American government, that is the Joe Biden administration, to stop funding Israel and stop sending weapons to Israel in the war that it is carrying out in the Gaza Strip and now in Lebanon. Are we to now say that if Donald Trump were to get elected, besides the Russia-Ukraine war, he'd also want to bring about peace in the Middle East and stop the wars there?
There were no wars in the Middle East when Donald Trump was president. So I think that we can take some confidence in his ability to negotiate. And I don't think that we would see as much conflict there if Donald Trump wins.
Interesting. Let's also talk a bit about the economy now. Kamala Harris has said that the economy was doing great under Joe Biden. Yes, there's a problem of inflation, and she, if she were to get elected, would want to correct it. And also to sweeten the deal, she's also promised to give the American first-time home buyers a down payment of $25,000 if she were to be elected as the president. Firstly, where's the money going to come in for it? Can Kamala Harris deliver on a promise like this?
No, she can't deliver on it, and how we know that is because she hasn't done it yet. But of course, a promise like that just contributes to inflation, and she's just hoping that she could bribe some voters with that promise, and they wouldn't notice that it was creating a bigger issue. We know that she's not strong on the economy, or the economy would be strong. We're supposed to believe somehow that Kamala has all of these solutions for the economy, but she's just been keeping them in her back pocket the last 4 years. We know that Trump does know how to make a strong economy. He built the strongest economy in American history, and he will do it again. So I think that on the economy, there's a reason that voters support him so much more on the economy than they do Kamala.
But I'll tell you what the Democrat criticism of this is. The Democrats will turn around and say that, listen, Donald Trump says that he will reduce the taxes, but Kamala Harris promises to increase taxes on the rich. Now, the Democrats say that he will reduce the taxes for the rich, and for the middle-class Americans, there is very little that Donald Trump offers. What he's offering is probably a good economy, and people in America can rise with that. But for the middle class per se, there is very little that is coming in from Donald Trump. How do you respond to that criticism?
That rhetoric is completely anti the historical data that we actually have, because when President Trump cut taxes in his first term, we saw wage growth go up 7% for the middle class. That's huge. That in a year it went up 7%. So you see, it's not just about how much you're not paying in taxes, but about the growth that goes into the economy because of those tax cuts. So maybe you save a couple thousand on taxes, but you start making triple that. You start
Right.
making 7 times that. So that is the kind of contribution that Donald Trump brings to the economy. And everybody did live through that. So they remember.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.